I think later on they got Richard Kwashiga, who was then at the GBC to come. But what they did was that they quickly reorganized and came back very strongly. Now, when you lose an election in the way the NDC lost in the 2000 elections and the euphoria that brought the MPP back into power, it's almost the same thing that happened in the 2016 election as well. And the same thing has happened now. You don't rush into utterances, making statements and trying to, score political points. Because at that time, things are still fresh in people's memory. Ghanaians are the ones who kicked you out. And there is a reason for kicking you out. So anytime you are even making a legitimate statement, asking legitimate questions, in their mind, and then psychology of communication, in their mind, they think the clock didn't just start ticking. You just left power. So emotionally, the emotions is not with you. So that's why the statement that was made over the weekend by Patrick Boama, that they need to look at their communications very critically, is very, very important.
So I was going to ask whether it's fair for some of those you're referring to that we need to check your background, though you're a party member, before you mount the platform to say anything about the party. We need to check about, whether you've been charged with a crime or something, even if you've not been declared guilty yet.
No, I mean...
Before we give you the chance to.
Is that fair? You are innocent until proven guilty.
Absolutely.
But perceptions matter. In other jurisdictions, as soon as you are accused of crime, when you belong to any organization, either the organization would ask you to step aside, just so your presence doesn't derail the organization in the way they do things, or you yourself would actually take a back seat until the matter is settled down. Because by and large, there are people, and remember, when it comes to legal literacy, it's not everybody who has that legal understanding, but there are some people who would come to that conclusion, and they do come to that conclusion that there's no smoke without fire. And therefore, if they have accused you of A, B, C, D, that's what it is. Some group of people don't. So in order not to play into their hands, you really don't want to get somebody who is undergoing an investigation, no matter what. The person is innocent, but for the sake of the, if you like, the negative perception by association, that would actually come to you. You better, but there's nothing illegal about it, but it's more of the political morality. The political, if you like,
the image, reputation,
those things are very, very. And you can't wish that away in politics.
So sometimes life is not fair, because whoever probably is facing that, and it could be that there isn't any underhand dealing. That is why after you go through the process, and then you can still get involved behind the scenes, but being a poster boy, being in the forefront itself, it has its own positives, it has its own negatives, and it is the responsibility of the political party to do that assessment and see whether your presence, is it really going to bring in more positivity, or the negative outweighs. And if you look at the time we are now spending discussing that, that is clearly telling you that that would be time that you could have been using to discuss the activity of your candidate that he was associated with. Now, a lot of time is being spent to discuss the appropriateness or otherwise of his involvement in the process, and that could be avoided. The point is clear. Let me come to Prince. Primaries at the end of this month, right, for the NPP. Yeah. The hopefuls, who do you think would do more good for the NPP if they win? Among the three.
All the people they have presented, they all have their strength in various ways. Is left with.
But they are saying two will cause disaster if they win.
And you are saying the point is that in politics, there can never be a contest without people stepping beyond the line. That is accepted in political communication. For somebody to come and say that I'm the person, these two people can cause disaster. Yeah. It's a fair game to play. But all of them are coming from, as lawyer was saying, coming from a very huge loss in an election that has taken only just 1 year. And so they all have to be measured with the way they go about doing the politics.
Because
there have been several contests like this within the party. Some of them, was even fierce than this one, and the party came out, and it was still one party they all came to work for. So after this contest, there will surely be that one party. Every party will have factions in it. That you can't take it away from any groupings. But how you manage it, how you measure utterances, so that when we are done, the cracks will not be too much. For us to mend and the people moving forward.
It boils down to one party, as you've said. But don't forget, Brian is also saying that some two factions are not really agreeing, and if one wins, the other is not going to throw their weight.
No. That's just
part of
the whole thing. Because when it's good they are doing this early. Don't forget the NDC also have to pick a candidate, and they also have their time. So in politics, these are political stages. When power is automatically, even when it comes to chieftaincy in the same house, the same family, if one is picked over other, there's always that division. But after the whole
they all have to come
process,
together.
They all sit down as a family and begin to now reconstruct the broken pillars.
So Brian is just saying something.
No. He is an insider. He knows the sharp divisions. But the point is, it will always come down. Assuming that these two people that he's talking about, none of them win, and he Brian's come up, will he also have the support of the two? It might be his thinking, but he might also not have the support of another section that he is thinking they will go along with him. So, in party politics, this will come, cracks are there, but after the elections, tensions will come down. They begin now to negotiate, to talk,
but Oscar,
to see concessions and all that.
Dr. Osei Educhum also did well in education. He was once an education minister. And they are saying that he also has got the clout to make a difference.
Well,
an experience.
I always tend to try and put things in context. Look, where the MPP is now, it's a handover from the old generation to the next generation and a jostling for positioning themselves for the next possible government. This is what is going on. It is pure and simple, nothing more, nothing less. So it's politics. We've been in this politics for how long? Does it sound new to you? These statements, do they sound new to you?
You don't believe them.
But if you haven't learned the lessons, that your own words can come back and bite you in the butt, and bite you to the point where you cannot walk, goes totally against you, and you have just experienced it, you should be guarded by what you say, especially about the impression that you give about your party, which, as far as I'm concerned, some will say, well, it's got some historical relevance to his statement. But look, there are others who have left the MPP. At that time, there was a lot of talk that the party will collapse. It didn't. It rebounded. The same with the NDC. Even the late Her Excellency, the late former First Lady, her party, she formed another party, moved out of the NDC. Did the NDC collapse? And there are so many other examples. I can name them. I won't bother wasting my time doing so, but I can name them. The party didn't collapse. So, and if I were the MPP today, I'd be very measured by what I say going forward. And the issue of communication is critical because Ghanaians are very much awake. You do not come off the back of an election that, whether you call it abysmally beaten or whatever, I think that's just trying to give jabs. But you should have learned the lessons, and you've gone through the process of what was, what went wrong. Focus on getting those things right. Going into this and trying to make it look like, of course, it's like, let's go and play football. I'm not winning, so I carry my football away mentality. That for me, it doesn't augur well. I mean, whether it is Alan Tremanting, whether it is whoever, you are gambling with your own political stakes. And you find out that political parties are only political parties because of the human beings inside. Any organization is not an organization without human beings. You want to do away with the organization, form a new party, do a new thing. Don't forget, it's the human beings who will follow or who will enter. And based on their integrity, based on their, will determine where that political party or whatever will go.
Okay.
Go.
So can we?
But finally, let me just say something. President Kufuor made a very profound statement. He said it's better to be a messenger in a ruling government than to be in opposition.
Yeah, in a significant position and opposition, something like that.
I think that the MPP should be concentrating how to really get power and not stop adding to the woes that they have and the perceptions, especially when the NDC is performing as it is performing at this juncture.
I think you made the point.
I think they have to be pragmatic enough.
Yeah.
So you see,
quickly, and then we move on to the next after this.
But you see, what you need
submission.
to understand is that you cannot blame Brian and his handlers per se, because in the business of political communication, you would use any tool available to you to get an advantage. Of course, you need to make sure you're not doing it to achieve an immediate gain, but the ultimate, because there is a concept in political propaganda called pinpointing the enemy. And that's exactly what he's doing. Pinpointing the enemy basically is trying to say he is a problem.
He didn't look in the mirror.
But
the Smith issue, doesn't he think that was a dagger in the back?
But that is not. It is down to the opponents to also now do what? The countering. That's what I'm saying. That if you are advising him,
also part of the problem.
If you are advising, if his advisors would think, listen, at this stage, maybe let's play this, because it's a propaganda technique, and propaganda works in a way in political communication.
That's the
now, pinpointing the enemy, fear mongering, appeal to fear, all those things work in political communication. Now, what I think we need to appreciate now in terms of political communication is that political communication in a technological era has changed every dynamics. So gone are those days where you can flip-flop. You can go meeting one group of people and say something to them, go to another group of people and say something to them, and when it backfires and it comes out, you say, I didn't say it, provide a proof, and people cannot provide a proof anymore. Now in the technological era, at the click of a button, they would bring that audiovisual to you and it confronts you, and then that is a problem. And that is what now the politicians would have to appreciate and choose their words carefully. The who you are talking to, the who you are when you are saying it is very crucial. Otherwise, you would get what you want immediately, but the longer term, it would come and confront you, and you would have no high.
We have limited time. We need to cover the other two topics. So if you don't mind, I would want to go to the next topic.
Okay.
Because we have just...
I was just about to say, for 1 second.
Okay.
I hear in Wales, they have criminalized lying. In Wales, they passed a law. The politicians who lie go to jail.
But if they bring it to Africa, then we have to create a
jail. We have to do that here. If we are doing constitutional reform and all of these things, we have to do it here. Because we are
the review committee, right?
It's unethical anyway.
Okay. So let's go to GDA, okay, Ghana Bar Association. And I'll still start with you, Tanko, a strategy, because you are a legal practitioner. The former GBA head has really, attacked the Constitutional Review Committee that, they've sort of conceded to some kind of influence from the current administration. But first of all, let me ask, would it be right to say that you represent GBA?
I am a member of the Ghana Bar Association.
Good. So your position on the recommendation to withdraw them from the Constitution?
You see, there is a history to this GBA brouhaha. Remember Ward Brew? Ward Brew had taken this matter up, I think somewhere in the 1996 thereabout, where he was trying to create the impression that within the concept of freedom of association, as outlined in our own constitution, you cannot force me to belong to a private organization. And that was recognized. Do you get the point? Yeah. Now in our constitution, the constitution recognizes freedom of association.
But that same constitution also, when the constitution was coming into being, because at that time, the GBA was, if you like, the only, recognized association, and it's not only GBA, even GJA, which I'm also a member of GJA. The GJA also actually has key role to play in some institutions. Now, it is not only GBA that the constitutional review is saying that let's actually get GBA out, but they are saying that any private organization where individuals have the right to freedom of association, they should not be seen to be what? Being given prominence over any, because if you say GBA and I don't belong to GBA, because I don't have to belong to GBA to be able to be a practitioner in Ghana. No, people can create their own association.
So you don't have an issue with this?
I don't think it's a problem.
Okay.
I think the problem is that we need to make sure that we have very clear criteria in terms of if any institution is going to play a statutory law or role or is going to be involved in any statute, there should be a clear-cut criteria as to how you qualify to go there. Do you understand? And ultimately, for instance, GJA has a seat at the National Media Commission. Do you get a point? Now, why GJA and why not GIBA?
Okay.
Why not a private newspaper publishers association? So the concept is about to try and satisfy this whole concept of freedom of association and not give any one private organization an advantage over the other. But there are antecedents to that, and I think we've got to that stage where it is appropriate for us to consider that. But I think it is unfair on the Constitutional Review Committee to say that they are perpetuating a particular, and these issues have been coming on and back and front. It has been happening. So I think it is very important that we
some people might be a bit.
It's a privilege. A privilege is not a right.
So,
do you get a point? A privilege is not a right. And therefore, when you are going to give somebody privilege, there has to be fairness, there has to be equity, there has to be some sort of reasonableness in the way you go about doing that. So, I mean, if there were no contention, fine, GBA, not a problem. But once there is contention, and that contention borders on association, and everybody is free as to which organization to associate with, if one association is giving prominence over the others, clearly there would be problem. And you don't want the highest law of the land to be giving credence or weight to that sort of situation, because then when it happens that way, then the very law that is supposed to provide us all with that fairness, just and reasonableness may be seen to be complicit in aiding another association. But that's why it's going to be subjected to what? A review. We will make a decision. If Ghanaians decide that, irrespective of everything, we
so
still
it's
want
not
to
conclusive yet.
No, it's still not
Prince,
conclusive.
does Ghana stand to lose anything if GBA is withdrawn?
So I'm looking at the professional representation and the political appointments or the executive power. There should be, quote and unquote, a balance, because the executive over some time, or as we all know, is wielding a lot of power. Some of these associations are the buffers and the checks we have on the executive, especially if when we know that a lot of these boards are constituted by the executive and all that. So, as lawyer was saying, if one professional body is giving prominence over a field that we can have more professional bodies there, that I'm not in support of it. But their representation is very important. We shouldn't get to a point where the executive, through a legislature from parliament, can say we are limiting your power or limiting your representation, and it will affect these professional bodies. We need them, because some of the boards, for you to have these professional bodies, means that they can fall within the ethical or the framework of an ethical work that they are to do, because all the people will be sent by these professional bodies will be judged by professional conduct, and their licenses can even be withdrawn when there are infractions. So to them, when they go there, their work is a bit of a balance for them. But those who are appointed, the way they can crack is that you are no more on the board, So I'm looking at,
to just provide a context before you continue. This case is actually before the Supreme Court. The case is before the Supreme Court, actually. Whether or not, when they say GBA, it means only the GBA as it is, and the Supreme Court will make a decision on that. But I think to avoid getting the Supreme Court to be caught up in interpreting, that's why there is supposed to be a review, so that the review will be more express, and then this time around nobody will need to.
Because I heard of neutral formulations as well.
Yeah, so nobody is saying there shouldn't be representation of
associations, but which association? Do you
Individual
mention the name
institution.
of the association, or you leave it open to say maybe an association of maybe lawyers? So depending on how many associations of lawyers you have at any particular point in time, they would then have to come out with an objective criteria as to how they send their representation. And we do that now on NMC in terms of the training, media training institutions. The media training institutions are supposed to send a representative on the National Media Commission. Now, in the past, it was almost like GIJ, because GIJ was the end of this thing. But later on, when other media training institutions came up, they found a formula where there is more or less like an election among the media training institutions, and they decide who to push. So that's basically the principle, and I don't think it's a bad principle.
So me, that's where I stand.
That's where you stand, okay.
They will not be sidelined. That's all.
Oscar, we may want to comment on the Boafo's view that, the CRC, got a lot of pressure and influence from the administration.
Well, first and foremost, I think I'm in total agreement with my friends in the rationale that they've put forward for the GBA not to be the only representation on the Constitution, but rather freedom of association should play its role. Even in the neutrality that we are speaking of, it takes human beings to and the processes. I mean, we're still dealing with issues of the Supreme Court, its neutrality, the judicial system, its neutrality. Where does it end? So for me, the logical conclusion is that it's a private entity. What right does it have above all other private organizations and associations for it to have the privilege of being there? So that is one area that needs to, to be settled. But then the gentleman brings up in his reportage that the CRC had been around and these issues basically had never cropped up. And this is where he says he's very cynical. The GBA has representation on the Police Council, the Immigration Council, the General Legal Council, the Judicial Council, and the National Media Commission. And not one of these organizations has brought a report that shows that the GBA has not conducted itself, And so when you are looking in terms of those particular issues, you would expect that there would be some kind of dissent. The same thing that happened really when we called for the OSP, when this guy was Martin Pebu, and then all of a sudden there was a call for the OSP's office to be, first it was for him to be removed. Now it was about the OSP's office to be, where did it emanate from? And that kind of thing.
Just a minute
but really speaking, I think that we're seeking to make sure that our Constitution is functional for our current dispensation and going forward.
Okay.
And I can speak towards that because when I was involved with the development of Act 935.
3 seconds, is that what you're saying?
for the Film Act.
Yeah.
And in that act, there are names of organizations that have been represented there. And some of the arguments were, why were those associations, when there are a whole host of other associations out there embedded in the law? So there are those kind of issues that are there. So I can understand where this is coming from.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on the show. Time really runs so fast when we start this. But anyway, thank you, Oscar. Thank you, Prince. Thank you, Tanko, for coming on. Headlines on the GTV Breakfast Show. Coming up, we have Rand Lotto results coming up. Stay on.